Hey guys, welcome back to Token Tech. Today I want to talk a little bit about temperatures, voltage, and just keeping your system as quiet as possible, especially since we're heading into the summer season and it's going to get a lot hotter out there. So some of you might be wondering how you can run your system a bit cooler in the summertime without losing too much performance or any performance at all. Now some of you might know that if you go into your power settings, you can actually switch the power plan. So if we go here and we open up our power plan, you have a couple here. Balanced is usually what it's set to default, and high performance is what you'd really want to do because you want to get the most performance out of your system. But for the quickest and easiest way to try to save on some temperatures and try to save on some power and try to save on some noise from fans not having to spin up, you can set it to balanced mode. Now what that's going to do is it's going to kind of balance how fast your hardware runs based on how much load is on that hardware. What this means is that your CPU is not going to be at its top clock speed all the time. So for instance, right now I have my CPU at 4 gigahertz. If I go into Task Manager and open up performance, you'll see I'm hitting about 3 gigahertz, and that's me running OBS. So it is under some load, and that's because I have balanced on. Now watch what happens when I switch it to high performance. It all of a sudden jumps up to basically 4 gigahertz at high performance mode, right? Even though there's no extra load being put on the system. Now, this will impact your performance a little bit, especially in games, because games don't normally load up your CPU. So your CPU is going to run slower during games, which will impact your performance because the cores that are getting hit aren't going to speed up. And it's going to take a little bit longer to speed up when it needs to, okay? So leaving it on high performance mode is the best for performance, but it will use a bit more energy and it will produce a little bit more heat. However, this is probably the easiest way to try to save on some temperatures, but it will impact performance, and that's not really what we want to do. Now, what I would suggest is doing something known as undervolting. Now, for those of you who are AMD fans and use Polaris graphics cards like the 580 or Vega graphics cards like the Vega 64 and 56, you are very aware and familiar with undervolting. For everybody else, you probably aren't. Those cards perform so much better when you undervolt them. And what that means, well, it means you just give them less voltage than what's out of the box. Here we go with CPUs. I am running an 1800X, first gen Ryzen on an X370 motherboard, Asus Crosshair 6 Hero. Now, out of the box, running it stock, so basically 3.7 gigahertz is what you see on screen, and stock auto voltage, you're going to get what's on the right hand side. All right, so just to keep things consistent, all of our undervolts are on the left hand side and all of our stock or auto voltage is on the right hand side. So on the right hand side, you're going to see that the auto voltage went to about 1.3 volts. We're hitting a temperature of 61 Celsius. We're pulling about 115 watts, and we're running at 3.7 gigahertz. Now, I guess you could say this is fine, and I guess it's fine. There's nothing unsafe about this voltage or these temperatures, but mind you, I am running a custom loop, a custom liquid cooling loop. So if you're using an air cooler, your temperatures will probably be a bit hotter than this, especially if your case has bad airflow. If you look on the left hand side though, we're still at 3.7 gigahertz, meaning we haven't dropped any performance whatsoever, but our voltage is significantly lower. Now I'm not sure why it does this, but if you look on the right hand column over here on the maximum column, you'll see that I keyed into the motherboard 1.13 volts, but when I put it under load, it always drops the voltage and keeps it at that lower value of 1.075 volts. Now with that, we're pulling a maximum of 97 watts, 98 watts, and an average of around 95 watts. And we're only going to about 48 degrees Celsius. So we're staying under 50 degrees Celsius. That's quite a bit of a difference, right? We're saving a lot on temperature between stock auto voltage and the same clock speeds at 1.13 volts. All right, that's huge. That's huge because something you want to remember is that most of us, myself included, we're running our fans through a PWM control, meaning there's a fan curve, meaning the hotter your chips run, the faster the fans spin, the louder they get. So the colder your stuff is, so here 48 degrees, it's going to be significantly quieter than running it at 61 degrees Celsius. Not only is it quieter, but it's cooler, meaning that if the ambient temperature is hotter, it won't affect it quite as much, right? So that's something we want to take into consideration, is that as our ambient temperature increases as summer, approaches, our computers are going to run hotter, meaning that we want to get the chips, something we can control, to run as cool as possible so that the heat from the atmosphere doesn't affect it as much. And we are saving a little bit of electricity here, right? Not that big of a difference, but still a difference. And why would you want to waste electricity if you don't have to? Remember, we're not losing any performance here. So we're saving temperature, we're saving noise, we're saving electricity without losing any performance, all right? And this is stock. This is how the motherboard does it out of the box. So just so you know, this is probably happening to you as well. So now let's take a look at an overclock. So we have 4 gigahertz is the overclock I have on the CPU. And again, on the right hand side, you can see 4 gigahertz at stock or auto voltage. It's going to hit the CPU with 1.369 volts. The temperatures spiked up to well over 60 degrees Celsius, and after about 30 minutes, plateaued at about 70 degrees Celsius. We're pulling 135 watts with a spikes going up to 165 watts, and we're hitting 4 gigahertz. All right. Now, again, like I just explained, the hotter it is, the faster the fans spin, the louder they get. So this configuration was quite a bit louder, and I mean that, quite a bit louder than when we undervolted at 4 gigahertz. So at 4 gigahertz, I was able to dial in a stable voltage of 1.325. Pretty significant decrease. Now that's what I punched into the motherboard, like I said already. For whatever reason, when I put it under load, it drops a bit and stays at that lower value. So under load, it was only doing 1.256 volts, which is quite a bit lower than 1.369. All right. We're doing 60 degrees Celsius. You can see it did spike up to 61 and then went right back down to 60. So we can see that it plateaued at 60 degrees Celsius, which again is 10 degrees Celsius cooler, meaning the fans are spinning a lot slower, making a lot less noise. And our wattage is significantly lower in this case. We're doing about 112 to 115 watts with spikes up to 136. And the spikes were up to 165 on auto. Again, pretty big difference there. And we're doing the same clock speed, 4 gigahertz, same performance in maximum performance mode. We're not sacrificing any performance here, but we're gaining a lot of temperature headroom, and we're saving on some electricity. We're also saving on noise. We're not producing as much noise, and our system doesn't have to work quite as hard to keep it cool. This is going to help you a lot if you live in a hotter climate or if you're about to enter into summer like I am. It'll keep your system quieter. It'll allow you to maintain your overclocks. And even if you're running at stock, it'll allow you to feel a bit safer about your temperatures and, avoid thermal throttling. All right, so undervolting is definitely something I recommend. A lot of these motherboards, they'll just blast your CPU with voltage because they're aiming for the lowest common denominator, meaning that if you happen to get a really, really bad chip and you put it in there and it's just not stable at stock speeds, those motherboards are going to blast it with voltage to make sure that it's stable. Most of us, and I'd say basically all of us, don't fit that. Our CPUs aren't that bad. So you can definitely undervolt and get much better temperatures and the whole shebang. All right, so I would definitely recommend undervolting. It's kind of fun to do, and I guess I should show you the process of what you should do to test it. So let me go ahead and get rid of these. So here we have Cinebench R20. Sorry, I had to restart that section because like a fire truck just drove by. This is going to be what you want to do as a quick or shorter test instead of doing like a stress test off the bat. So you'll go into the BIOS by pressing delete when you reboot your computer. When you get there, drop the voltage a little bit, and then when you get back to the desktop, run Cinebench R20. If it passes R20, let's say 2 or 3 times, Go back to the BIOS and drop the voltage a little bit more. Keep doing this until you can't pass Cinebench R20. Force restart your computer, go back to the BIOS, and increase it to the last time you were able to pass Cinebench R20. After that's done, then you want to look into a program called Prime 95. All these programs are free, by the way. What you want to do is open this up and press small FFT. What this is, as it says, it produces a lot of heat and it stresses your CPU quite a bit. This is an unrealistic workload. This is going to be harder than anything you put your CPU through in normal circumstances. When you run this, it'll load up all the cores and threads on your CPU and really make it work hard. You want to let this run for a couple hours. I'd say at least 6 hours. Probably let it go overnight. You know, some people do 24 hours. I'm more of a 12-hour guy myself. And make sure you check on it every now and again. If it stops testing, so if any of those threads stop testing, if your CPU isn't at 100% usage, if it crashes or locks up, you know it's not stable. Go back into the BIOS, increase your voltage again, come back and do Prime 95. Keep doing that on repeat until you finally get something that can pass, I'd say at least 5 or 6 hours, probably better if you do 12 hours of Prime 95. At that point, you are rock solid stable. You don't have to really worry about crashing or anything like that on your CPU, and you have undervolted your CPU, meaning you'll get better temperatures, use less electricity, your fans won't spin up as much, and you won't dump as much heat into your room, which is definitely a benefit since we're going into summer. This is basically how you undervolt your CPU. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.